What it do, everybody? Thanks for joining us today for the seventh episode of the Not Five Guys podcast, where we're five guys that talk about sports. I'm your host, Kevin, filling in for Serge this week, who won't be in the episode due to a prior commitment. Nonetheless, here's who we're joined by today.
What's up? I'm Nikhil.
How's it going, everyone? It's Phil.
And I'm Jerry.
All right, and our focus today on this episode is going to be the upcoming MLB season. So we're going to spend some time talking about some of the main storylines going to the season. We're also going to be doing our This Week in History segment, which we haven't done in a while, in addition to an intro to Formula One and its upcoming season. So we'll be talking about a new sport there, so be sure to stick around for that. And of course, we're going to end with our weekly predictions. We're going to kick off our episode with a little fun fact for our This Week in History. With March Madness starting soon and the NBA regular season wrapping up over the next month, this fact is kind of fitting. This Wednesday, March 11th, is the 128th anniversary of the very first public basketball game ever played. That game was played in Springfield, Massachusetts, where the game itself was actually invented. So on this day in 1892, about 200 people gathered to watch a game between teachers and students at the local YMCA.
Damn, that's a long time ago.
They played on real baskets back in those days.
Yeah, literally, I think I read that.
Wait, did you have to take the basket off the basket?
No,
You had to take the ball out of the
peach
basket. Yeah.
It was a
No,
peach
I think
basket.
I think they cut a hole in the bottom of the basket.
They also used a soccer ball for that too.
Damn.
Yeah.
The cross sport functionality.
Yeah. But anyways, March Madness isn't the only event that's coming soon. MLB opening day is right around the corner on March 26th. So let's jump into our main focus for today. Nikhil, why don't you give us an explanation of how storyline is going to work?
So we've pared this down a little bit since last time. We are going to say a statement. Each of us is going to say one statement, and all of us are going to go through and say whether we would feel comfortable posting that statement on a burner account, putting it in a article, and otherwise getting a tattoo of it on our body somewhere. Of course, the tattoo meaning you really believe in it if you're getting it on your body. So we'll kick it off with Jerry.
So the first rule is three-batter rule will have a large effect in MLB. So let me explain a little bit about the three-batter rule. This rule is designed to speed up the game by eliminating some pitching changes, because we have been seeing a lot of pitching changing in the late inning of the game. So the rule stated that any starter or reliever must face three batters or pitch until the inning is over before coming out of the game. So the most important part of this sentence is they must face three batters or until the inning is over. But there's an exception. Pitchers can still come out when they're injured or they're ill, but they must be approved by the umpire. So personally, I don't think this is going to be a huge effect in MLB. So I definitely putting this in my burner account because I don't believe this will be a huge changes. According to MLB, when they look back in the past 20 seasons, you can see that the relief appearance has actually the relief stretch has actually become longer and longer because pitchers actually be better. And also back in the day when baseball first started, usually one pitcher lasted the whole game, so don't really need that many pitching changes. Also, there's a lot of the most important effect is like pitcher actually had to pitch to three batters, but sometimes they can still pitch one batters because the inning will come to an end, and you don't really need pitcher to stretch too long. Just one batters. So you have to make sure you calculate correctly to input your relief pitchers, and the manager have to actually calculate properly. Also, another important thing that changed this year is the roster spot has been increased by one, which means team can actually carry one more pitcher. They don't really need a batter, so it actually increased flexibility for managers to manage their bullpen. Also, why I don't think this will affect a lot is because according to MLB, Yankees are ranked the bottom 5 to be affected by this. The Yankees are not affected, so it's not a big
All
problem.
right,
We'll
Jerry.
get to the Yankees later, Jerry.
I think that this is going to be pretty negligible effect, but I won't go so far as Jerry and say I think this is a burner account sort of thing. I definitely think this makes a relatively big change to the role of specialist relievers, especially people like Tony Sipp. Shout out Tony Sipp, who used to be brought in for 1v1s with Shohei Ohtani and then immediately taken out. Um, there's a lot of players who, especially lefties, just based on the distribution of lefty to righty hitters, get brought in for a single batter and then get taken out. And now, of course, their use drops to only the last out of an inning rather than any out of an inning, which is a little bit strange. And of course, I worry for the actual impact on the players themselves. An interesting thing to look at here is that part of the reason that this rule was put into place is Wade Miley in 2018 in the playoffs. I think the MLB was honestly just pretty shocked that someone would do something smart, like put in an opener with a different handedness and have the opposing manager put in a lot of players who have an advantage to that opener. Wade Miley, of course, put in, and the opposing manager put in a lot of players who had the opposite handedness and then gets taken out after one batter in a playoff game. MLB thought this was a pretty bad look. Of course, I don't think it's a bad look. I mean, I thought it was a really smart play, but who knows? The MLB doesn't seem to like fun very much.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing for me looking at this rule is I honestly hate it. I think it's that yeah, you're removing what managers were thinking is smart, and honestly, it reminds me of Little League. No, like what professional sport has a minimum amount of time that a player has to play? That's a Little League rule. This is a professional sport. So to me, this is definitely gonna have a huge effect on games. I'm getting this tattooed on my body. I think, like Nico was saying, you get a lot of these lefty relievers who guys like Adam Kolarek last year led the league. He had 42 appearances where he faced two batters or less, and that's out of a total 80 appearances. So you get a lot of these cases where you've got guys that are coming in for one batter because they're a lefty specialist. Um, and now what do? And there's actually a really good article on The Athletic where Jason Stark interviews some managers, and all of them hate it. You got Bud Black on the on coach of the Rockies saying a team should be able to do what they want with their players. The Diamondbacks coach Torey Lovello says it's not going to be as simple as people think, and so it's really going to change the strategy of the game because if you're facing the Angels and you have Mike Trout as a righty, then Ohtani as a lefty, then Rendon as a righty, what do you do at the beginning of an inning? Do you pitch your lefty specialist to shut down Ohtani, but then he's got to face Trout and Rendon? Or do you bring in your righty, and if Trout gets a hit because he's the best player in baseball, well, now Ohtani's got this great matchup against your righty reliever. And I think you're going to see a lot of scenarios like that this year. And one of the most interesting things is we could see more intentional walks because in that case, maybe you want to walk Ohtani and get, if you got Trout out, you walk Ohtani so you can get to Rendon and face those matchups. So I think there's a lot of things in play that will actually, I think like overall it will increase the strategy, but it's definitely going to increase it and have a huge effect on how managers have to think about the game because they have to account for these matchups. They can't have a quick hook if a guy gives up a solo shot as soon as you bring him in. He's still got to face two more batters. I think there's a lot of effect from this rule.
Yep, really interesting to talk about with the Angels, especially. There's also the question of do you say, okay, I'm going to take the righty and then bet on Ohtani missing or bet on Trout missing, which is like, you probably don't want to bet on Trout missing, but, you know, Jerry has other opinions.
Yeah, I do. I look at the Angels lineup. Their projected lineup is Mike Trout, Rendon, and Ohtani. So I mean, Madden might put Otani at third, but I don't think that's gonna be happening.
No chance.
I don't think he's as good as Rendon. I think the Angels want someone who's more consistent and better at Rendon at third after Mike Trout. So if you walk Mike Trout, the Angels will do more damage with Rendon instead of Otani. Look at Otani just coming back from injury, so I don't know how well he's feeling right now. Look, he hasn't been
interesting to see the split of his workload too, as they try and manage him as a pitcher again. And they also have the breakout season from Tommy La Stella to consider in that too. So enough about the Angels. Why don't we move on to the Yankees for a little bit here? Of course, big betting favorites. Jerry, I know you have many thoughts about the Yankees. Why don't you tell us a little bit?
Yankees win the World Series. There's nothing else to say. You know,
There's actually a lot to say, but
there is a lot to say.
I say it every year since 2003. Yankees will win the World Series that year, no matter
Jerry,
how bad
I guess you have a lot of tattoos on your body.
How many? You got a lot of tattoos, and what? Two of them are accurate.
I would just have one, just change the year if they don't win, and then continue that. Just
that's a lot. That's a lot of scratch offs. That's a lot of scratch marks.
Okay, last year Yankees won 103 games, and with a lot of injuries, they're still ranked number 4 in batting average, 1 in runs scored, and then 3rd in OPS. They're still one of the best hitting team, not just their stadium, because they have a really good hitting coach. And with this year, finger crossed, assuming everyone stay healthy, which haven't been so far. Severino is out, Judge is out, Sanchez is out. Everyone is out. So if they stay healthy,
Jerry, if you have no players, how are you gonna win the World Series?
Hey, they're gonna come back in after 162, regular season. And they're gonna feel fresh. Their body feel fresh. That they're not going through the whole long season. That's what happened last year. They decided not to play the regular season and decided just straight go for the playoff.
And how did that work out?
It didn't work out well, but hey, they did hit better in the playoff in previous year, so maybe that's a strategy. Local Yankees got Gary this year. So that's a big.
All I'm hoping for is another Aroldis Chapman awkward smile at the end.
You'll see him smile again. After winning the World Series.
Super awkwardly after he gives up another Game 7 homer.
No, he's not. It's not gonna be Game 7. It would be like a sweep in the World Series, man. Yankees are that good.
Okay.
Oh.
Jerry's doubled down.
Jerry is all in on the Yankees.
I think that what you're looking at, a lot of people are going, oh, the Yankees are the betting favorites, this and that. Yeah, they are. They were also the betting favorites last year. And a little bit about betting favorites. Of the last 35 years, only 6 times the betting favorites have won. And that number is a little bit inflated by the 99 and 2000 Yankees, who were part of that trilogy of championship teams. The last team to be the betting favorite preseason and win was the 2016 Cubs, of course, who had many things going for them, including a John Lester and Chris Bryant and Rizzo. But one of the things to see that's weirdly consistent with trends, betting preseason betting odds, is that basically the bookmakers will take the same team for 5 to 7 years, or 4 to 6, 5 to 7, in that range of years, and the team will win once. So, for example, the late 80s Mets were 6 seasons betting favorites, and they won in 86. Then you have the 90s Oakland Athletics, who eventually gave way to the late 90s Atlanta Braves, who won in 95. And then you have the 2000s Yankees. The Yankees are almost always betting favorites. And let's talk about that a little bit, right? In the 2010s, the Yankees have been favorites 3 times. In 2020, they're, of course, 1-for-1. But 2010s, 3 times. How many championships did you win in the 2010s, Jerry?
We won 0. We won 2009.
Yeah, 0. Yeah, I know that. I looked it up. In the 2000s, out of the 10 years of the 2000s, does anyone want to take a guess as to how many times the Yankees were betting favorites preseason?
8.
Maybe like once or twice. Like they were having been very down in the 2010s.
No,
Actually, maybe
2000s. 2000s. I'm talking 2000s.
2000s. Oh, they were favored in like 2000, 2001, 2002, 2003,
So all of them.
2004.
So you're picking 4, and Phil, you're picking 8?
Yeah.
You're both low. The answer is 9. They were favorite 9 times out of 10 years in 2000s. And
That's
how
the
many
only-
championships did they win, Jerry?
They win like 4. Well, no, 2.
2. 2 is correct. 2000, 2001, and 2009.
Hey, we were
Or sorry,
really
2000,
close in
2000.
another year.
What happened in 2001? Shout out
We
Luis
lost to the-
Gonzalez.
We lost to the Marlins.
Yeah.
No, you
sounds
didn't
like
lose to the
sounds
Marlins.
like they're overvalued to me.
2001, they lost to the Arizona Diamondbacks. Luis Gonzalez, with the little blip. And so here's something that I figured was pretty fun to look at, because we'll talk about, the 90s, 99, 98, 99, 2000 Yankees. In our lifetimes, the Yankees have been favorites 13 times, which is about 60% of the years. And they've won 4 championships, which is something like 18%, which is a lot. But 60% is a shit ton of favorites, of times that the Yankees have been the favorites.
So for me, when we had this idea of the Yankees to win the World Series segment, I thought back to a couple episodes ago where we had a segment on the Dodgers trade for Mookie Betts, and that turned into a Yankees will win the World Series segment. So I thought I'd take the reverse and make this a Dodgers Mookie Betts trade segment. So let's dive into a little bit to the Dodgers and why they should be the favorite to win the World Series this year. They won 106 games last year, and then they just went out and added a former MVP in Mookie Betts. They're getting the Rookie of the Year favorite in Gavin Lux. And as part of the Mookie Betts trade, they picked up David Price, who's a solid starter in the rotation. His xFIP, which is the expected fielding independent pitching, it's a statistic that tries to look at a pitcher's pitching without defense. His xFIP has gone down 2 years in a row. It was 3.73 last year. You can kind of compare the scale to ERA if you're familiar with that scale. And that was good for the 19th in the MLB last year. So David Price is a solid addition, which a lot of people thought he was just kind of a salary dump for the Red Sox. But that's a good number 3 starter for the Dodgers behind Walker Buehler and Clayton Kershaw. And a little bit more about Betts. He's a former MVP. Last year, he was worth 6.6 wins above replacement, and he's replacing 2 guys in Alex Verdugo and AJ Pollock that combined for only 3 wins above replacement last year. So if you take that at pure face value, you're taking a 106-win team, and now they're a 109-win team. They're clearly the best team in baseball, in my opinion. They also, in addition to Gavin Lux this year, they've got another top prospect in Dustin May who could come up and help their rotation. They got Brusader Gratterall in that trade. He could come in and bolster their bullpen through midseason as they get into the playoffs. And all this time, I haven't even mentioned their current MVP, Cody Bellinger. This team is unstoppable. Their talent level is undeniable. I don't know how you cannot take the Dodgers as a favorite over the Yankees, in addition to just the fact that you look at the schedule. Who else in the NL is that good? I don't think there's a clear challenger in the NL to the Dodgers. In the AL, you have the Astros who won 100 games last year. You have the Twins that won 100 games last year. The Rays in their own division won 95 games last year. There are so many solid teams that have done stuff this year. All right, the Astros lost Jarrett Cole, but the Twins and Rays have improved. The Astros are still one of the best teams in baseball. It's going to be a lot harder for the Yankees to get there. So if I had to say the Yankees were going to win the World Series, that's on a burner account. So I don't know.
The Dodgers might have a really good shot at winning the World Series, according to you. But they're only a regular season team. They haven't been playing that well in playoff. I don't think they will make it that far. The NL East are actually really stacked this year, and also the NL Central. whoever come out of both division will be really, really good. And I don't think the Dodgers will even pass them, even though they lost to the Astros because of banning of trash cans. But maybe this is not their year. They just don't have the luck.
Thought you could sneak that in with Surge out this week. He'll be yelling at you.
Oh boy. All right. Why don't we move on a little bit to our surprises of the MLB season? I know, Phil, you have an interesting one.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna go with the homer pick here. My surprise team of the year is the Chicago White Sox. I think right now they're sitting at the third best odds to win the AL Central with a win total of 84.5. Probably about a 30% chance to make the playoffs. But I think they can get out there and make the playoffs this year. I think they'll be a nice young team. The thing for me is, yes, they only won 72 games last year, but they're a young team, so the young guys like Eloy Jimenez, Yohan Moncada, Lucas Giolito are only going to get better. They add the two favorites for AL Rookie of the Year this year are on the White Sox. You have Luis Robert, who just signed a big contract extension this offseason, and Michael Kopech, a flamethrower who's got a 100-mile-per-hour fastball. Yes, he's coming off Tommy John, but he's been out for a year. They said so far in spring training, he's looked good. He's targeting a return in May or June, so they're not trying to push him along. But once he gets there, he can be a solid number 3 in the rotation behind Lucas Giolito and Dallas Keuchel, who they acquired this offseason. A little bit more about Keuchel. They also got Gio Gonzalez to bolster their rotation and signed Yasmani Grandal. This Grandal signing is especially key because he's one of the best framers in baseball as a catcher. Last year, he saved the third most runs due to his framing ability per MLB's StatCast. And that also works because Dallas Keuchel, despite only pitching 113 innings last year with the Braves, benefited the 29th most due to framing because Keuchel's not a flamethrower, but he likes to paint the corners, which Grandal really complements. And the White Sox had one of the worst framing catchers last year. The worst 2 pitchers in terms of runs lost to framing from the White Sox. You also have Lucas Giolito in the top 12, in addition to Renato Lopez and Ian Nova. So Grandal's framing ability is really going to help this young pitching staff improve. It also just boosts your confidence when you paint the corner. So I think that's a big addition. And finally, when you look at their division, I'll be honest, it's terrible. You've got 2 of the worst teams in the MLB in the Tigers and Royals. That's a lot of easy wins. The Indians started selling the team this offseason, and if they're not competing, if they're not in first by July, I expect them to keep selling at the deadline. So the Sox have an easy path to second in their division, and I think they can get enough wins to get a wild card spot and rocket into the playoffs.
All right. I find it funny that we have managed to mention all of our favorite teams in this segment.
What a shocker.
A good look at the White Sox and the Yankees, and a little bit of a detour to the Angels. And of course, shout out to Tony Sipp of the Astros. I think we shouted out some other Astros. So, but I'm going to go the opposite way from you. I'm going to go for a surprise team that I think is going to be significantly worse this year. The reigning champions, the World Series winners of last year, the Washington Nationals. And if you look at odds, depending on the site, you're going to find the Nationals 6th or 7th. But the really big thing, of course, the big loss is Anthony Rendon to the Angels, who had 6.3 WAR, which he was 10th of position players by BWAR. He was 9th overall by FWAR, of course, BWAR, Baseball Reference, and FWAR, Fangraphs. And he's going to be replaced with some combination of Asdrubal Cabrera, who was on fire the second half of last year and finished with 1.7 WAR, but 1.2 of that was after being traded. He only had 0.5 WAR before getting traded to Washington. And even that only got him up to 217th by F4. And this is hitting behind Soto and Rendon, where people are pretty damn scared of those two, so they're gonna give you whatever you want. And they also got Starlin Castro this year, who has 0.8 WAR who had 0.8 WAR last year. You're not really finding strong, valuable players to replace the production of Anthony Rendon. But the other thing there is look at their division too. They have Atlanta in that division. They have the Phillies in that division. Even the Mets are not bad this year. So they're not gonna be able to get that many easy wins. It's only really Miami. But speaking of Miami, Derek Jeter is gonna get into the Hall of Fame this year. And speaking of Miami and Derek Jeter, Jerry, I know you want to talk a little bit.
Speaking of reigning champions, since the 21st century, no team has ever repeat a championship. And the last team that did that, you know who that is, Nikhil?
Yeah,
Yankees.
I do.
I'm gonna bring that up just to make sure you know the fact.
Oh, I know the facts.
Team for this year is the Philadelphia Phillies. They're projected to win 81 games, 81 losses. Around the 500 team, no, they're not. Every stat from last year, they were right in the middle of everything. They're hitting, they're pitching. They haven't been performing well because I don't think their manager was that great last year. They have a better manager this year in Joe Girardi. They're going to bring in a new hitting coach, new pitching coach. I think it's going to change the culture. The new culture usually changes team a lot, and it probably will help them win more games. They also have a better starting pitcher, Zach Wheeler. Also, Aaron Nola didn't pitch well last year. I think Aaron Nola is going to come out hot this year and pitch a way better ERA than last year. Because Didi was another key game for them to have a solid shortstop, so they can move Sean Segura from shortstop to second base, which gives them a really, really good infield with JT Realmuto at catcher, Rhys Hoskins at first base, and Scott Kingery at third base. And not to forget, their best hitter, supposedly their best hitter, Bryce Harper, will have another great year. Last year he had a down year, and according to his trend, he usually had one down year, one great year, one down year, and one great year. So last year he had a down year. That means this year he will have a great year. With Bryce Harper bringing up that hitting lineup, they will win a lot more games. And I think the NL East is a little bit. I think they projected too high for all the other teams. I don't think the Braves are that good. Their hitting is pretty good. Their pitching is solid but not as great. And the Mets are okay in hitting and pitching. They improve a lot, but I don't think they will be great because their bullpen is not as good. Also, they did bring in
They're gonna get that midseason call up of Tim Tebow and then go undefeated the rest of the year. So
funny.
Can't stop when God's on your side.
Nah, dude, they'll bring Tebow in in the middle of the season because they realize how bad they are, and they need him to bring up the sales ticket. That's what they did, and it works.
I think we'll see Tim Tebow in August for 2 or 3 games.
Have 40 men this year.
You don't have 40 men this year, so maybe not.
Yeah,
maybe not.
The chance of seeing younger player at the end of the season is getting lower because the MLB decide to make everyone play their real lineup, which is kind of sad. I really like the new player coming up. It actually helped the team a lot. So that's a big change as well for MLB this year.
I think the MLB made a lot of changes trying to get their viewership up, and I honestly don't know that any of them are going to work. We'll see how they turn out, but I don't know.
I think the viewership will be up this year. Since Serge is not here, the viewership is up not because MLB changes the rule, because everyone is interested what happened to the Astros. And
yep, I also think this will happen.
Now, I hear a lot of radio saying, especially in LA, it's they're not a huge fan of the baseball game, but they watch it this year just because they want to know what happened to the Astros.
Yep, those Dodgers-Astros games are going to get lots of views.
I don't know if they actually play each other this year. I'll check.
Uh,
All right.
All right.
All right. Definitely a lot of possible surprises to look forward to this season, and that's what makes sports exciting. But speaking of exciting, we're going to move into a sport that we haven't talked about yet on this podcast, and that's Formula One. The season actually starts this weekend, so there's no better time to talk about it. I actually got into Formula One just last year, and it's been so fun to watch, definitely exciting. Nikhil, I know you're the other person on the podcast that also watches Formula One. When did you start, and why don't you give us a little intro into the sport for those who don't know?
So I started watching Formula One. The first Formula One race I ever watched was when I was actually at in Singapore. When I moved to Singapore in 2012, I got the opportunity to go to the Singapore Grand Prix that year, and it's enough to get your heart really pounding, and that's what got me into watching it. There's a lot about Formula One that you really start to get into as you start to learn more about it. For example, this is, of course, the most popular form of racing in the world, but it's also the highest form of single-seater racing. There's Formula 2, Formula 3, and Formula E. But in terms of other sports like rallycross, the highest level of single-seater stuff is Formula One. And there are a lot of things that your car has that actually owe to Formula One. For example, seat belts and windshield wipers are things that were developed to keep drivers safe or make it easier to race in the rain, but also pretty high-tech stuff that you find on some cooler cars today. Cooler being, of course, a subjective term, but things like a kinetic and energy recovery system or a KERS system that you can find on things like Teslas nowadays also owe to F1. So the way that an F1 season works is there are 22 races, but there's likely going to be 21 this year due to coronavirus and one of the races being in China. There are 20 drivers and there are 10 teams. And races are around 300 kilometers. That's a very rough estimate, but lap times are usually in the 1 to 2 minutes, and people start to come up with some form of this is how many laps we're going to do on this track. There's, of course, another rule that states that no race can be longer than 2 consecutive hours. There might be stoppage due to different reasons, like a huge crash, but there can't be racing for more than 2 consecutive hours. The races are really interesting because they're almost as much about engineering as they are about driver performance. There's a lot of strategy that goes into these, especially with relating to fuel weight, which the more fuel you have, obviously, the longer you can stay out without pitting, but you have to come in at least once. And then also tires. And also, of course, as you go faster, as you lose weight, fuel weight, you go faster. And these cars are extremely light. So that fuel weight really does matter. And then there's also the tires, where there's multiple different types of tires, like hards, medium, softs, super softs. But during a race, you have to use at least 2 different types of tires. You have to pit once. And the tires wear at different rates. So you can be on a slicker tire that goes faster but destroys itself quicker, or a harder tire that you can go for longer and you don't have to pit as much, but you also have problems like it doesn't go as fast, but it allows you to race for longer. There's a lot of rules that go into the races themselves, like corner cutting, blocking, and then there's races that go to the car itself, like you can only have a V6 engine. So we'll talk a little bit about a race weekend. A race weekend works like this. There's 2 practices on the Friday. There's a 3rd practice on the Saturday morning, and then there are qualifiers. There are 3 rounds of qualifying where there are 5 drivers dropped every round. And the racing is based on a flying lap time, which means you start at full speed. And during the race, after the race, the points are divvied up. The first place gets 25, the second place gets 18, so on and so forth. Only the top 10 drivers get points, and at the end of the season, the total points winner for drivers is crowned the champion. And there's also a second Constructors' Championship, which is based on each team having 2 drivers, and the aggregate totals of both of their drivers' points.
Yeah, so diving deeper into this upcoming season, like Nikhil mentioned, there's 10 teams that compete, but this year there's really only 3 teams that have a chance at the Constructors Championship, and that's Mercedes, Ferrari, and Red Bull. And yes, Red Bull is an energy drink, and no, they don't make their own engine. They actually use a Honda engine. And so the reason there's only 3 teams that are likely to win the championship is because typically they're the teams that are best funded. So more money means a better design and better development. And so of the 3 teams, Mercedes is the favorite to win this season. They've actually won the past 6 seasons, and their driver, one of their drivers, Lewis Hamilton, is the favorite to win the Drivers' Championship, as he's pretty skilled, and he's won the past 5 of 6 Drivers' Championships. His top contender this year is probably his teammate Valtteri Bottas, and since they have the same car, they're expected to be on equal playing field, so he'll have a good challenge from his teammate. Outside of the top 3 is known as the midfield, and so that's the other 7 teams, and they compete for 4th place. And I know it might seem odd to be competing for 4th place, but there is a pretty good monetary incentive, so teams actually do try if they can't get 1st place. The midfield is definitely a lot more unpredictable, whereas the championship has gone to Mercedes the past 6 years. But the 4th place midfield title has actually gone to 3 different teams in the past 3 years. And so it could be anyone's game. This year, there are four favorites. And so, like I said, it's unpredictable. So that's why there are 4 favorites. McLaren is one of the favorites. They won it last year. Renault is another favorite. They were the fastest in preseason. I want to give a shout out to their driver, Daniel Ricciardo, who was sporting a Kobe helmet in testing when he went fastest of the midfield. And then Racing Point, who was dubbed Pink Mercedes this year because their car is pink, and a lot of people are saying they copied Mercedes design for this year. So we'll see how they do. And I'm not gonna make a prediction of who out of the 3 are actually gonna win. But what we are gonna do is we're gonna jump into our weekly prediction segment where we will be predicting the result of some other sports.
Damn, that was a smooth transition.
So yeah, so far for this month, for our predictions, Jerry's sitting at 2-0. Serge and myself, we're sitting at 1-1 each, and Phil and Nikhil are both sitting at 0-2.
Damn,
Phil,
at the bottom again.
You better not be losing again. And just a reminder, our punishment this month is doing the NFL draft combine.
Hey, I think running and lifting is probably better than eating whatever the fuck Vegemite is made out of, because that was awful.
It's mushrooms, dude.
If you guys haven't seen Phil eating the Vegemite, check out our Instagram and Twitter at Not5Guys. But anyways, let's jump right into our prediction. Our first one for this week is Pelicans at Jazz. Jerry, who do you think?
I've been on the Zion bandwagon. You know how amazing he is. Like, those stats are just amazing. Like, there's nothing you can do. Like, 20 points, like 5 rebounds. Man, he's great. And with Brandon Ingram on the side, like, he has less pressure taken out of him. So I think Pelicans beat the Jazz.
I agree. I am also going to go with the Pelicans. We've seen how good Zion's been, and Lonzo's finally getting his 3-point shot back. So it's definitely going to be a good game, and I have the Pelicans. And since Serge can't be here, he chose the Jazz.
I also have to take the Pelicans here. I mean, with the emergence of the full court Lonzo to Zion alley-oop, I don't know how you can defend that. Lonzo is faster than your biggest guy who you have on him. He's just going to jump over him, and he's going to go get up and get that alley-oop. So gotta take the Pelicans here.
It's funny that you guys talk about how good Zion has been, how good the Pelicans have been. With Zion playing, they're only 10-10. They're still a 500 team. Despite all the highlight plays, they're not actually like, yes, they're better than they were, but they're still not a playoff team. The Jazz are the 4 seed in the West. They're at home. This is an easy win for the Jazz to me.
All right. What do you guys think about Grizzlies at Spurs on Monday?
This, I think, is going to be a much closer game. I think this is a little bit more interesting because the Grizzlies are fighting to hold on to that 8 seed, whereas the Spurs are about to lose their 22-year playoff streak if they don't turn it around soon. And for me, I think the Spurs do take it. Greg Popovich is a veteran coach. He's going to try to get the most out of his guys as the season winds down. So I think they take this game at home.
I'm going Grizzlies. I mean, I think the Grizzlies have cemented themselves as the 8 seed. Of course, they're dealing with a lot of pressure from both the Spurs and the Blazers, but they have proven time and time again that they're a good enough team to take on all of these big, I mean, relatively big hitters, of course, with the exception of the actual big hitters like the Lakers and the Clippers. But cementing themselves as the 8 seed, they really know that they have to get up for this game because, as you said, the Spurs are closing in on them and the Blazers are closing in on them too. So really interested to see how this game goes, but I'm taking the Grizzlies.
I am going to have to agree with Nikhil on this. I'm also taking the Grizzlies. I'm jumping onto that amazing rookie train. I don't think the Spurs, even though at home, I don't think they're going to be able to beat the Grizzlies. But Surge is going with the Spurs, and I'm sure if he was here, he'd love to give a shout-out to DeMar DeRozan, so give him that shout-out for him.
I think Grizzlies are 2-1 against the Spurs. As long as Tim Duncan is not coaching for Papa, I'm taking Grizzlies winning all the way for this game.
Hey, but Tim Duncan's 1-0. He's undefeated. Coaching.
Yeah.
That's what I say. As long as he's not coaching, I'm taking the Grizzlies.
Oh, okay. My bad there.
That's fine.
Right, and our last prediction for this week is the Champions League matchup between Lyon and Juventus. And the prediction for this is who advances to the next round of the Champions League, not who wins the game. Jerry?
Oh, with the coronavirus, I don't even know when this game might be played or not. But if this game do play, they might have a lot of rest because they never really play at home because Italy decided to close up the game. I'm taking Juventus winning this game to advance as well. After a long time of not playing, they only decide to fade away and Juventus take the game. And I believe they have one of the better player in the league as well. Do you want to take him again?
Ronaldo?
Yeah.
Jerry, first you can't find research on Dortmund. Now you don't remember Ronaldo's name.
Jeez.
Come on.
All right.
The most important guy I know is Sergio Aguero from the Man City. That's all I need to know.
I don't think that's all you need to know. There are many more things you need to know.
Yes.
All right. I am taking Juventus on this. They've got home court advantage, even though they might not have any fans of the game. But they've got one of the, like Jerry said, they've got one of the best players to ever play. And I think they already saw what Lyon threw at them last game, so they'll be able to come back and counter. And Serge is also taking Juventus.
I mean, I think it looks like I'm going to be the only one going the opposite way here. Yes, they are playing in Turin, but Juventus Lyon at the current moment is scheduled to be played behind closed doors without any fans. Lyon has the advantage. This is effectively going to be a neutral site game. And of course, with any game to advance, Lyon having a 1-goal advantage means they just have to chill at home. The other big thing is that Juventus has no away goals, meaning that going into this game, they can't even let Lyon go. They can't let Lyon win 2-1. Or sorry, they can't win 2-1. They can't allow any Lyon goals if they're going to win by 1. They have to win by 2. And so there's so much pressure on this team right now. Plus, they're not even getting like a proper home court advantage. I gotta go Lyon here.
You are not the only one, Nikhil. I'm with you on Lyon. I think, this game is very up in the air with if it will be played in Turin or if it will be played somewhere else, because right now Italy has canceled all soccer matches and all sporting matches. And either way, it's looking like Juventus won't be getting that home court advantage. And yeah, they're pretty even. They're pretty even teams. And so if you take out the home court advantage with that deficit that they are down 1-0, and like you said, they don't have away goals, it's going to be really hard for Juventus to come back and advance. So I'm with Nikhil and taking Lyon.
Phil is picking all the opposite of me. So we could either go really well or really bad.
Oh, you and Kevin have the exact same picks. So this is going to be an interesting swing week.
Yeah.
Hopefully you two don't drop even lower. All right. Well, that's the end of our show today. We actually talked about a new sport this week for a second week in a row, so you never know what new sport we might bring on next time.
Hey, shout out curling.
Yeah, but anyways, thank you so much for tuning in to the 7th episode of the Not Five Guys podcast. Once again, please feel free to comment below and let us know what you liked, what you didn't like, if there's anything you'd like us to add. We appreciate all the feedback that you have. But with that, we'd like to thank you once again for listening, and we hope to catch you next week on the next episode of the Not Five Guys podcast.